Today's video, we covered some upper body assessments. We're particularly looking at shoulder internal and external rotation, and then the ability to get the arms overhead without flaring the rib cage. If you enjoy the content, remember to like and subscribe, and check back every single week for fresh videos. Alright, so we always start with standing posture, and we can see immediately for Brandt that he's leaning back through the shoulders. This puts a lot of tension into his mid-back, his T-spine, and is not ideal for loading. In this second image, we can see we've coached him forward. Look at that, weight into the toes, a beautiful straight line from ankle to shoulder, no tension in the mid-back, ready for action. So starter for 10 for Brandt is to keep working hard to get the weight forward, keep his rib cage down, take all that tension out the mid-back, and keep that shoulder in line with the hips. We want to start right to finish right, and this is his base position going forward. Next up, we did a standing shoulder flexion test, his ability to get his hands overhead. Look at the start position, similar to the standing posture. We've got the weight back, a lot of tension into the mid-back there, and it's not going to be ideal. Then when he reaches the hands overhead, look at the low back space here. Yes, his hands are up, but we have got a lot of hyperextension into that low back. Again, the rib cage is flaring, and that's going to cause some compression and potentially injury later down the line. Okay, so here's a corrected version, and I want you to pay close attention to what Brandt does before he lifts his arms up. So you might not have seen it this time, but watch closely. He's going to shrug his shoulders ever so slightly to elevate his shoulder girdle, and then boom, look at this top position. Beautiful straight line from shoulder to hip, weights in the toes, and most importantly, the rib cage is down. Brandt can access this overhead position. He just needs to learn to elevate the shoulder girdle to give him some space, and then the rib cage will stay down. And so we see our side-by-side comparison. I definitely prefer the right-hand side image here for Brandt, much more stacked, and that's what's important when it comes to lifting weights overhead, stacking those joints so that the spine stays healthy. Next up, we checked some shoulder internal rotation, and there's quite a lot going on here, so we're going to pause the image after this first rep and let you have a little look. So you can see as Brandt comes round, there's a lot of elevation through the shoulder, which is normal, but look at that bottom position there. Ideally, the hand should be reaching up to the red line. The shoulders should be nice and straight, but more importantly, look at that dip and rotation forward on the left hand side. Brandt is already in a depressed and internally rotated position, so for the only way for him to find more is for him to tilt to the side and lean forward. When we look at the other side in a second with the shirt off, we're going to watch the scapula fully pop off the back, which we definitely do not want to see. We switch to the right hand side here, we're going to see the real opportunity in Brandt's shoulder. Look at the shoulder blade, the scapula has pretty much fully popped off the rib cage. That's definitely not a good spot for him to be. A lot of compression and potential for injury into the front of the shoulder. So top priority is going to be elevating and retracting those shoulder blades to improve that shape. Side view really sells it here. This is the left shoulder, which moves a lot better. We can see at the bottom position here, we're going to see a pretty good straight line from the elbow to the wrist. Yeah, the elbow's a wee bit behind the shoulder, but that's totally normal. But when we flip over and we look at the right hand side, look at the shape that's taken here. We can see the hands in a funky position, the wrist is sort of broken back as Brandt's desperately trying to push that shoulder forward when it's already sitting forward into the joint. So from the comparison, the side by side, really obvious, a big difference between the left and the right in that internal rotation, and that's something we're going to get after. So I'm only throwing this in here to highlight how important it is to have balance between the joints for any movement. Look at the top position here when Brandt gets up here. I've drawn a marker on his rib cage. You can clearly see how one side of his ribs is higher than the other, and how one part of his body is twisting forward compared to the other. The second we add load onto that, we're going to be putting imbalanced forces through the spine, through all the other joints and muscles, and that is where some of our injury and overload is going to come from. So the shoulders and the hips are linked. We have to have them lined up and communicating effectively to prevent any potential risk of injury, especially when moving heavy weights. And just in case you don't believe me, look at the bottom of Brandt's barbell back squat. This is literally the flip version of what you just saw with the wall arm slide. That shape that you take with the hands when you slide up the wall is very similar to the shape in the barbell, and we can clearly see the rotation, the compression, and the challenges that Brandt has at the bottom of his squat. So we're going to cover the lower body assessments next, but it's clear to see that how the shoulders communicate with the hips is going to have a significant impact on our ability to move big weights.